All right, this is kind of our part B to our 7.5 lesson. There's something else we're going to do. The book doesn't cover it till way back at the end of the book, and I know we're not going to get to that chapter, so I'm going to do it now. What if I had an equation like x cubed plus 2, wait, no, let's do 3x squared. I can't write. 3x squared minus 18x minus 40. And let's say I was trying to graph this, and I was having a hard time doing it, and I needed to graph it, and I needed some points. Well, I know I could go to the calculator, but there are other ways to get points too. I could plug, if this were equation y equal this, or let's call it f of x actually. Let me go ahead and call this f of x. What if I wanted to know, maybe I was going to have to get some values and I was sitting somewhere and didn't have my calculator or just didn't want to rely on my calculator. There are ways to get values. Like let's say if I wanted to make a table over here and I wanted to fill it out and I didn't have my calculator with me, I could actually do that pretty quickly. So what I'm going to do, I want to calculate a value or two just to show you that we can use synthetic division to do that. And what we're going to do is we're going to divide. If I want to plug in x is 2, for instance, what I'm going to do is I'll do synthetic division by 2. And what's going to happen is the very last number over there, the remainder will be my y value for the x that I plug in. So the remainder is the y value for the x value I divide by. Let me put it that way, okay? Because I could plug in a 2 and cube it and then, square it and multiply it by 3 and do all the, I could plug it in the normal way, but synthetic division is faster and people love this a lot better than they do having to plug that number in and chug it out if they weren't allowed to use their calculator. So what I'm going to do again is the same thing as I did last time. I'm going to pull off all the coefficients. So I would have a 1. That would be a positive 3. This would be a negative 18. And this would be a negative 40. And so with synthetic division, if you remember what I do is I have to drop the first number down to get something going here. And anytime I have a number down here, I multiply it by the number that I'm dividing by. So I would say 2 times 1, that is a 1. I've just dotted it, pointing to it with the stylus. 2 times 1 is 2. I write my answer here. Anytime I get numbers here, I'm going to add them. So I'll just put a little plus sign to remind you of that. 3 plus 2 is 5. I got a new number down here. I multiply it by that 2 out front. 2 times 5 is 10. I write the answer right here. Now I'm going to add these two numbers. Negative 18 plus 10 is a negative 8. Since I got a new number here, I'll multiply it by that 2 out front. 2 times negative 18 is negative 16. And if I add negative 40 and negative 16, I get negative 56. Oh, guess what? This is my y value. If I plug in x is 2 into the equation, I get the y value of negative 56. If I were to give you this on a quiz or test, I would not allow, you could check your work with a calculator to see that you did it right, but I would have to see all the synthetic division done properly to give you credit because you're learning a technique here. I know you can go to the calculator and just pop a value out, but that's not what I'm looking for. So just a warning that don't think you're going to kind of skirt this whole issue by using your calculator, okay? All right, so that's basically what we're doing in the second part of 7.5. I want to go ahead now and introduce some of 7.6 because it's also using synthetic division, though the book doesn't really, it kind of says some stuff that lets you know we're going to factor some stuff, but we're going to talk about maybe ways that we could do that, what tools we have to use. So I'm going to start that now. Okay, so for 7.6, we're going to factor some problems. And actually, the problem I just picked to use for my example for synthetic division is actually problem number 1 on 7.6. So I'll just use it again. X cubed plus 3x squared minus 18x minus 40. When I see, some terms, 4 terms, my first thing I always want to try is to see if I can't factor it by grouping, if I want to factor this. Well, if you look at this, that doesn't work in this case. Let's say I arrange it like this. I could pull an x squared out of the first 2 terms, and I would have an x plus 3 left over. And then if I go down here, I'll do the second part. I would factor out a negative. The biggest thing that divides out of 18 and 40 is 2. That would be a 9x plus 20. See how these terms don't match? I cannot factor this by grouping. But maybe I want to break it down, okay? Now, if I want to break it down, I'm kind of stuck here, right? Well, I could just pick some different factors and divide in and do long division, or I could use synthetic division to try to help me find out some things that might divide into it. I could use synthetic divisions to help me do the division quickly. How am I going to know what might divide into this evenly? Well, here's what you do to find the factors, the possible factors that might divide in. Not all of these will, but if there are some that will divide in there, they will be in this list. I'm going to take the factors of the constant term. In this case, that's going to be 40, negative 40 actually, sorry. And I'm going to put it over, I'm going to create fractions that might divide in. It's going to go over the factors of the leading term. And the leading term is always the term with the biggest exponent, even if you don't write it first. And you should write it first. That's why we want to put things in order from biggest exponent down to smallest exponent. We should never be just letting it be mixed up from now on. We need to put it in order so that we can do things to it. Well, my leading term is this x cubed here, so that's going to be the factors of 1. So now, sometimes there's another number out front, and that makes it a little more difficult. Here it's just going to basically be the factors of negative 40. So I can make a list of things that might divide in there. Negative 1 and positive 1, and then it would be like 40 and negative 40, right? Positive 2, and here's what we usually do when we list this. We usually actually don't write it in that kind of form. We do this. We go plus or minus 1, plus or minus 40, plus or minus 2, this must be a plus there, plus or minus 20. And if there were different factors on the bottom, I would list those on the bottom. On the bottom here, I'm just going to have plus or minus 1, which isn't really going to matter at all. Let's see, 4 and 10, so plus or minus 4, and I've run out of room, so I'm going to kind of have to write up here. Let me get rid of that green there. Plus or minus 10. 5 and 8 divide into 40, so plus or minus 5, and plus or minus 8. And I think that's it, okay? So if I have factors that will divide in, they're listed here, okay? There might not be any. And in order to prove that there aren't any, I have to try all these factors. So I'm always hoping to find something. All right, so what I usually do is I start small. I'll start with plus or minus 1. So let's do synthetic division. Let me go ahead and draw the bar. And I'm going to pull off my coefficients, 1, 3, negative 18, negative 40. And I'm going to try 1 first. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to try negative 1. I always start small because it always tends to be that there's a smaller factor in here. Usually books are nice to you and they give you things that have some of your smaller numbers in there so that you don't have to try every single one of these, because that's a lot of combinations here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times 2. That would be 16 different times I might have to do synthetic division if I don't hit a factor earlier on. So I'm going to drop down my 1. 1 times 1 is 1. 3 plus 1 is 4. 1 times 4 is 4. Almost put 5. Negative 18 and 4 is negative 14. 1 times negative 14 is negative 14. What I need to have happen is to have a 0 right here. In this spot right here, it's not going to be 0, so I am not going to waste my time adding those numbers up. I'm just on the lookout for, is it 0? If it's 0, it means it went in evenly, and that's a factor, so I can at least get a factor. So now that didn't work. Let me try negative 1. I don't know if it'll do any better, but we're going to try it. So drop down my 1. Oops, I didn't write I have to write all my coefficients down. Negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. I'll write that below the 3. Okay, so negative 1. 3 plus negative 1 is 2. Negative 1 and 2 is negative 2. Negative 18, negative 2 is negative 20. Negative 1 times negative 20 is 20. Didn't go in evenly, so I'm not finding anything yet. Let's go on and let's try 2 and negative 2. We'll try 2 first. So it's 1, 3, negative 18, negative 40 again. We're going to drop down my 1. 2 times 1 is 2. 3 and 2 is 5. 2 and 5 is 10. Negative 18 and 10 is negative 8. 2 times negative 8 is negative 16. It's not going to add up to 0. Let's try negative 2. This may go on forever, and I'm probably going to run out of video here in a minute. I'll probably have to stop, but this is the process I'd have to go through. Got to write those coefficients again. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. 3 plus negative 2 is 1. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. Negative 18, negative 2 is negative 20. Oh, look at this. Negative 2 times negative 20 is 40. Negative 40 and 40 is 0. Yay! I found a factor. And what this is x minus minus 2 that divides into there. So, if I'm trying to factor x cubed plus 3x squared minus 18x minus 40, I now know that x minus minus 2, it's x minus the factor here. So one of the factors is x plus 2. Now what did I have left over? I had left over these numbers, but we started with the cube. These numbers right here are going to go with the square. So this is 1x squared plus 1x, I'm just going to write the x down, minus 20. Now, I could do synthetic division on this, but this might be something easier to factor. So let's go see. What multiplies to give me negative 20 and adds to give me the 1 in the middle? Let's see, I think 4 and 5 are going to work, so let's try them. Let's see, I need a positive 1, so oh, look at that. Negative 4 times 5 is negative 20. Negative 4 plus 5 is 1. So my other factors are, remember we take this x minus 4. We put the minus 4 just with an x, and this is x plus 5. I just factored that whole problem. I used synthetic division to break it down, and once I broke it down, I had another tool that I could use that actually was easier. It was easier to just factor that instead of try all the factors of negative 20 and do synthetic division. So you're always using a combination of your tools to break these things down to the smallest point.